Grant is basically my almost ex-husband. We still live together, but it means nothing.
The moment my wife Dana introduced me as her almost ex-husband at Victor Brann's business dinner, I knew my marriage wasn't just over. It was being publicly executed with a butter knife. Grant and I still live together, but it doesn't mean anything, Dana said with that practiced smile she'd perfected during her 15 years in corporate HR. Her manicured fingers gestured dismissively in my direction like I was a piece of furniture she'd grown tired of. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Victor Brann leaned back in his leather chair, swirling his overpriced wine with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and his smile had all the warmth of a loan shark collecting debts. Good, Victor said, his eyes never leaving Dana's face. Then we can talk business without any complications. I sat there in my off-the-rack blazer, feeling like a discount store mannequin at a Nordstrom fashion show. The restaurant buzzed with the kind of quiet conversations that happened over $100 steaks and corporate handshakes. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against fine china, and somewhere in the background, a pianist played music that probably cost more per note than I made per hour. Well, I said, raising my water glass, if this isn't a knife in the ribs, it's at least a salad fork. Dana's laugh was sharp and hollow. Grant's always been dramatic. It's why we're getting divorced. That was news to me. Last I checked, we'd had exactly 0 conversations about divorce. Sure, things had been cold between us for months. Sure, she'd been working late every night, taking mysterious phone calls, and treating me like I was radioactive. But divorce? That was apparently being decided without my input. Victor leaned forward, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Grant Mercer. Commercial real estate, right? Didn't we have some business a few years back? That warehouse deal on the east side? 3 years ago, Victor's company had tried to muscle me out of a lucrative property deal. They'd used every dirty trick in the book, false inspections, bogus environmental concerns, even spreading rumors about my financial stability. I'd fought back and won, but it had cost me 6 months of sleep and nearly my reputation. That's right, I said slowly. You remember. Victor's smile widened. I never forget a face, or a competitor. He turned back to Dana. Your husband's quite the fighter when he wants something. Ex-husband, Dana corrected quickly. Soon to be anyway. Of course. Victor's voice dropped to a whisper meant only for me. You always were slow on the uptake, Grant. Some things never change. The waiter appeared with our entrees. Dana had ordered the lobster, naturally, while I'd gone with the cheapest item on the menu. Victor cut into his steak with surgical precision, each movement calculated and deliberate. So Dana, Victor continued, about that promotion we discussed. I think you'd be perfect for the regional director position. It would mean some travel, of course. Late nights, weekend conferences. Dana's face lit up like Christmas morning. I'd love that opportunity, Victor. I've been working toward something like this for years. I'm sure you have, I muttered. What was that? Victor asked. Nothing. Just thinking about all the hard work Dana's been putting in lately. All those evening meetings, those weekend seminars, that business trip to Chicago last month. Dana's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Those were legitimate business functions, Grant. I'm sure they were. Very hands-on, from what I hear. The tension at the table could have been cut with Victor's steak knife. Dana's face flushed red, and Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But his smile never wavered. Well, Victor said, I should be going. Early morning tomorrow. Dana, we'll continue our discussion about your future with the company. Grant, it was illuminating to see you again. He stood, dropped a credit card on the table without looking at the bill, and walked away. Dana watched him go with the kind of longing usually reserved for lost loves or winning lottery tickets. What the hell was that about? She hissed once Victor was out of earshot. Just making conversation with your boss. You were being deliberately provocative. Do you have any idea how important this promotion is to me? About as important as our marriage, apparently. Dana's eyes narrowed. Don't start with me, Grant. Not here. When then? At home, where you're never around? During one of your late-night phone calls that you take in the garage? Or maybe during one of those weekend conferences where you forget to call? You're being paranoid. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already made some pretty big decisions about our future without consulting me. Dana gathered her purse and stood up. I'm calling an Uber. Find your own way home. She walked out, leaving me alone with the check and the lingering scent of her new perfume, the expensive stuff she'd started wearing 3 months ago. The same perfume I'd smelled on Victor when he leaned close to whisper his little threat. I paid the bill with my credit card, knowing it would probably max out the account, and walked to my 10-year-old Honda in the parking lot. 3 spaces away sat Victor's pristine BMW, black paint gleaming under the restaurant's exterior lights. I looked around the parking lot, empty except for a few scattered cars and a security guard making his rounds near the building entrance. My keys were in my hand before I'd consciously made the decision. The scratch started at the front bumper and ran along the entire passenger side, a thin silver line against the black paint. I pulled out a business card and wrote on the back, "Real men don't need to steal wives." I tucked it under his windshield wiper and walked back to my car. I was backing out of my parking space when I saw the security guard approaching Victor's BMW, flashlight in hand. He looked up just as my headlights swept across his face, and for a moment our eyes met through my windshield. I drove home with my heart pounding, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life or the smartest move I'd made in years. The next morning, Dana was already gone when I woke up. Her coffee mug sat in the sink, still warm, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I'd been getting a lot of those notes lately. I made my own coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at our perfectly manicured suburban neighborhood. 2-story colonials with attached garages, SUVs in every driveway, and the kind of quiet desperation that came with 30-year mortgages and dreams that had been downsized to fit reality. My phone buzzed with a text from my business partner, Jim. "Coffee? Got some leads to discuss." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Jim at our usual diner, watching him demolish a stack of pancakes while I picked at scrambled eggs that tasted like rubber. "You look like hell," Jim said between bites. "Thanks for the pep talk." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? You've got bags under your bags." "Just some stuff at home." "Dana?" I nodded. Jim had been my business partner for 8 years. He'd watched my marriage slowly deteriorate from the front row. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Fair enough, but if you need anything—" "I know, thanks." Jim slid a manila folder across the table. 3 properties came on the market this week, 2 commercial, 1 residential. The residential's a tear down, but the lot's worth twice the asking price. I flipped through the listings, trying to focus on square footage and zoning regulations instead of the growing certainty that my wife was sleeping with her boss. The numbers swam on the page. "Grant." "What?" "I said the Henderson property has a motivated seller. They want to close by the end of the month." "Right, Henderson." I closed the folder. "Jim, if you found out Sarah was cheating on you, what would you do?" Jim's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Is Dana cheating on you?" "I don't know. Maybe, probably." "With who?" "Her boss, Victor Brann." Jim whistled low. "The guy who tried to screw us on the warehouse deal?" "The same." "Snake." Jim set down his fork. "You sure?" "Sure enough. Late nights, mysterious phone calls, new clothes, new perfume. Last night she introduced me as her almost ex-husband at a business dinner." "Jesus." "And I may have keyed his car." Jim's eyes widened. "You what?" "In the restaurant parking lot. Left him a note, too." "Grant, please tell me you're joking." "I wish I was." Jim rubbed his temples. "Okay, first things first. Did anyone see you?" "Maybe. Security guard. But it was dark, and I don't think he got a clear look. This is bad, man. Really bad. Victor Brann's got connections all over the city. If he wants to make your life difficult..." "My life's already difficult. My wife's screwing another man and planning to divorce me without bothering to mention it. How much worse can it get?" "A lot worse if you end up with a vandalism charge." I knew Jim was right, but I couldn't bring myself to care. The satisfaction of watching that key bite into Victor's perfect paint job had been worth whatever consequences might follow. Here, my phone rang. Dana's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Jim said. I answered it anyway. "Hello?" "Grant, we need to talk. Can you come home?" "I thought you were working." "I am. I will be. Just come home, please." The line went silent. Jim was shaking his head. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Everything's a bad idea lately." I drove home through midday traffic, wondering what fresh hell awaited me. Dana's car was in the driveway, along with a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I found Dana in the living room with a woman I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, expensive suit, briefcase on the coffee table. They both looked up when I walked in. "Grant," Dana said, "this is Patricia Wells. She's a lawyer." "What kind of lawyer?" Patricia Wells smiled, the kind of smile that probably cost $500 an hour. "I specialize in family law, Mr. Mercer. Divorce proceedings, asset division, that sort of thing. I see. I sat down in my recliner, the one Dana had been trying to get me to throw away for 3 years. And what brings you to our happy home, Patricia? Dana's asked me to represent her in your upcoming divorce. Our upcoming divorce. That's interesting, because this is the first I'm hearing about any divorce. Dana's jaw tightened. Don't be difficult, Grant. We both know this marriage is over. Do we? When did we decide that? We didn't decide anything. I decided. I'm done, Grant. I want out. Patricia Wells cleared her throat. Perhaps I should explain the process? Let me save you the trouble, I said. Dana wants a divorce. She's probably already got it all figured out. She gets the house, half my business, alimony, and I get to start over at 50 with whatever's left. That's not, Dana started. Actually, Patricia said, that's fairly close to what we'd be seeking. Ohio is an equitable distribution state, which means I'm screwed. I stood up and walked to the window. Across the street, my neighbor Bob was mowing his lawn in perfect diagonal lines. His wife was tending to her flower garden. They'd been married 32 years and still held hands when they walked their dog. There's something else, Dana said quietly. I turned around. What? Someone vandalized Victor's car last night, keyed it, and left a threatening note. That's terrible. Any idea who might do such a thing? The security camera caught someone, but the footage isn't clear enough for identification. Patricia Wells was watching me carefully. The note mentioned something about stealing wives. Very specific language. Sounds like Victor's made some enemies. Grant, Dana said, if you had anything to do with this, are you accusing me of something? I'm asking. And I'm telling you, I have no idea who would want to vandalize Victor's car. Though I imagine the list of possibilities is pretty long. Successful men like Victor tend to make enemies. Patricia Wells closed her briefcase. Dana, I think we should continue this conversation at my office. Mr. Mercer, you'll be receiving divorce papers within the week. I'd suggest you retain counsel. After they left, I sat in my empty house and tried to process what had just happened. 22 years of marriage ended with a lawyer's business card and the lingering scent of Dana's new perfume. I called the only person I could think of who might understand. Big Mike's gym, a gravelly voice answered. Mike, it's Grant Mercer. You got time to talk? For you? Always. Come on down. Big Mike's gym occupied the bottom floor of a converted warehouse on the east side of town. No fancy equipment, no juice bar, no mirrors except the ones that were cracked or missing pieces. Just heavy bags, speed bags, a ring that had seen better decades, and the smell of sweat and determination. Mike was in his 70s but could still go 3 rounds with men half his age. He'd been my boxing coach in high school and had become something of a father figure after my own dad passed away 10 years ago. You look like someone stole your lunch money, Mike said when I walked in. Worse, someone stole my wife. Mike handed me a pair of gloves. Want to talk about it or work it out? Both. For the next hour, I beat the hell out of a heavy bag while telling Mike about Dana, Victor, the divorce lawyer, and my moment of automotive revenge. Mike listened without judgment, occasionally calling out combinations or adjusting my form. So what's your plan? He asked when I finally stopped punching. I don't have a plan. I don't even know what I'm fighting. Sure you do. You're fighting for your dignity, for your self-respect, for the life you built. Dana doesn't want that life anymore. Then maybe it's time to build a new one. But first, you need to decide if you're going to go down swinging or just roll over and take it. I pulled off the gloves and wiped sweat from my face with a towel that had seen better years. What would you do, Mike? The old man smiled, and for a moment I saw the fighter he'd been 50 years ago. Like I'd make sure they remembered why they shouldn't have messed with me in the first place. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I signed for them at my office, trying to ignore the curious stares from my secretary and the way conversation stopped when I walked past. Bad news travels fast in a small business community. I read through the papers over lunch at my desk, washing down legal jargon with cold coffee and growing anger. Dana wanted everything: the house, half my business, spousal support, and even my retirement accounts. According to her lawyer's calculations, I'd be left with enough money to rent a studio apartment and eat ramen noodles for the rest of my life. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my daughter Sophie's number. Hey, sweetheart, I answered. Dad, what the hell is going on? Sophie had just graduated from Ohio State with a degree in communications and her mother's talent for cutting straight to the point. She was living in Columbus, working at a marketing firm and trying to figure out what came next. Your mother didn't tell you? She told me you guys were getting divorced. She didn't tell me why. It's complicated, Soph. Bullshit. Mom's sleeping with her boss, isn't she? I nearly choked on my coffee. What makes you say that? I'm not stupid, Dad. She's been different for months. New clothes, new attitude, always talking about work. Plus, Megan told me. Megan Bly was Dana's best friend and the neighborhood gossip queen. If Megan knew about the affair, half the city probably knew by now. What did Megan say? That Mom's been seen around town with some silver-haired guy in expensive suits, that they've been to dinner together multiple times, that Mom's been talking about how unhappy she is in her marriage. I see. Dad, are you okay? The concern in Sophie's voice almost broke me. She was 22 years old and shouldn't have to worry about her parents' failing marriage. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just working through some things. Do you want me to come home? No, you've got your own life to live. Don't worry about your old man. You're not old, and you're still my dad. After Sophie hung up, I sat in my office staring at the divorce papers and thinking about the life I'd built. The business Jim and I had started from nothing. The house Dana and I had bought when Sophie was 5. The dreams we'd shared and the plans we'd made. All of it disappearing because my wife had decided she wanted something different. Someone different. My secretary knocked on the door. Grant, there's a Victor Brann here to see you. Says it's urgent. I looked up from the papers. Send him in. Victor walked into my office like he owned it, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, his silver hair styled to perfection. He closed the door behind him and sat down without being invited. Nice office, he said, looking around at the generic furniture and faded carpet. Very modest. What do you want, Victor? I want to discuss your recent extracurricular activities. I don't know what you're talking about. Victor smiled and pulled out his phone. He swiped to a video and turned the screen toward me. The footage was grainy and dark, but it clearly showed someone keying a car in a parking lot. Someone who looked a lot like me. The restaurant's security system is better than you thought, Victor said. My mouth went dry. That could be anyone. Could be, but I don't think it is. Victor pocketed his phone. Here's what's going to happen, Grant. You're going to pay for the damage to my car. $3,000 for a complete paint job. You're going to stay away from Dana, and you're going to sign those divorce papers without making a fuss. And if I don't, then this video goes to the police. Vandalism, criminal mischief, maybe even stalking, depending on how creative the prosecutor wants to get. Your business license gets reviewed, your reputation gets destroyed. Your life becomes very, very difficult. I stared at him across my desk, this man who was systematically dismantling everything I'd worked for. The urge to reach across the desk and wrap my hands around his throat was almost overwhelming. You snake. Now, no need for name-calling. This is just business, Grant, nothing personal. You're sleeping with my wife. How is that not personal? Victor's smile widened. Dana's a remarkable woman. Intelligent, ambitious, beautiful. She deserves better than... He gestured around my office. This. She deserves better than a married man who preys on his employees. I'm getting divorced too. My wife and I have been separated for months. Dana knows that. How convenient. Victor stood up and straightened his tie. You have 24 hours to decide, Grant. Pay for my car and disappear quietly or face the consequences. Your choice. After he left, I sat in my office feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. The video was damning, and Victor had enough connections to make good on his threats. But the thought of just rolling over and letting him win made my stomach turn. I called Jim. We need to talk, I said, and bring everything we have on Victor Brann. An hour later, Jim spread files across my desk. Property records, business licenses, newspaper clippings, and financial documents we'd gathered during our previous dealings with Victor's company. What are we looking for? Jim asked. Anything we can use. Dirt, secrets, leverage. Something that gives us power instead of leaving us powerless. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Victor's company had been involved in several questionable deals over the years. Nothing illegal, but plenty of ethical gray areas. He'd been married to the same woman for 25 years, lived in a mansion on the west side, drove expensive cars, and belonged to the country club. On the surface, he looked clean. But Jim found something interesting in the property records. Look at this, Jim said, pointing to a document. Victor's company bought a piece of lakefront property 6 months ago. Paid cash, way over market value. So the seller was a shell company. And guess who's listed as the registered agent for the shell company? I looked at the name Jim was pointing to. Patricia Wells, Dana's divorce lawyer. That's interesting. More than interesting. It's suspicious. Why would Victor pay above market value for property owned by your wife's lawyer? I leaned back in my chair, thinking. Maybe we should find out more about this property. Road trip? Road trip. The lakefront property was 30 minutes outside the city, a secluded piece of land with a small cabin and a private dock. Victor's BMW was parked in the driveway. We parked on the road and walked through the trees until we had a clear view of the cabin. Through the windows, we could see two figures moving around inside. Jim handed me a pair of binoculars. Well? I focused the lenses and felt my heart drop into my stomach. Victor and Dana were in the cabin's living room, and they weren't discussing business. Dana was wearing a silk robe that I'd never seen before, and Victor was pouring champagne into crystal glasses. "Snake?" I whispered. "What?" I handed Jim the binoculars. He looked through them and shook his head. "I'm sorry, man." We watched for another 10 minutes, documenting what we saw with Jim's camera. The photos weren't explicit, but they clearly showed Dana and Victor in an intimate setting during what should have been business hours. On the drive back to town, Jim was quiet. Finally, he spoke. "What's your play here, Grant?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not going down without a fight. Victor's got that video. He can destroy you." "Maybe, but now we've got photos of him and Dana at his secret love nest. Photos that his wife might find very interesting." "You're talking about mutually assured destruction." "I'm talking about leveling the playing field." That night, I sat in my empty house. Dana was working late again, naturally, and stared at the photos Jim had taken. My wife of 22 years, the mother of my daughter, the woman I'd built my life around, wrapped in another man's arms in another man's cabin. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. When had Dana stopped loving me? When had I stopped being enough? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Time's up, Grant. Pay up or face the music." Verbi. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "See you in hell." GM. The war was officially on. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was the only one I had. I called in sick to work and drove to Patricia Wells's law office. The receptionist, a young woman with too much makeup and not enough experience, looked nervous when I asked to see her boss. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell her Grant Mercer needs to discuss the lakefront property." 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from Patricia Wells in her corner office, watching her try to figure out how much I knew. "Mr. Mercer, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. 6 months ago, your shell company sold Victor Brann a piece of lakefront property for $200,000 over market value. Yesterday, I watched my wife and Victor playing house in the cabin on that property." Patricia's face went pale. "I don't know what you think you saw. I think I saw my wife's divorce lawyer in business with my wife's lover. I think I saw a conflict of interest that would get you disbarred if the State Bar Association found out about it." "You're fishing." I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Jim's photos, Victor and Dana on the cabin's deck, champagne glasses in, hand, Victor's arm around Dana's waist. "Am I?" Patricia stared at the photo for a long moment. When she looked up, the confident lawyer was gone, replaced by a woman who just realized her career was in jeopardy. "What do you want?" "I want you to withdraw as Dana's counsel. Conflict of interest. I want the divorce proceedings suspended until Dana finds new representation. And I want you to stay the hell away from my family." "And if I don't?" "Then these photos go to the State Bar Association, along with the property records and a detailed explanation of how you've been conspiring with Victor to defraud me in my divorce proceedings." Patricia was quiet for a long time, staring out her office window at the city below. "You can't prove conspiracy," she said finally. "Maybe not, but I can prove the conflict of interest. That alone is enough to ruin you. Victor will destroy you. He has that video. Let me worry about Victor." I left Patricia's office feeling better than I had in weeks. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small victory in a war I was probably going to lose. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. Sophie's number. "Dad, what did you do?" "Good morning to you too, sweetheart." "Mom called me crying. She says you're trying to destroy her life." I got in my car and started the engine. "Your mother's life is destroying itself. I'm just trying to survive the explosion. She says you threatened her lawyer." "I had a conversation with her lawyer about professional ethics. Very different thing." "Dad, please, this is getting out of hand." "You're right. It got out of hand the moment your mother decided to cheat on me with her boss and try to steal everything I've worked for. But I didn't start this fight, Sophie. I'm just not going to lose it without swinging back." "This isn't you, Dad. You're not vindictive." "Maybe I should have been. Maybe if I'd fought harder for what was mine, we wouldn't be in this situation." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "Mom says you keyed Victor's car. Your mother says a lot of things lately." "Did you?" I thought about lying, but Sophie deserved better than that. Yes. Dad? It was stupid and petty, and I probably shouldn't have done it. But watching that smug bastard sit across from me at dinner, knowing he was sleeping with my wife, knowing he was planning to take everything I've worked for, sometimes a man has to make a statement. By vandalizing someone's car, by refusing to be a victim. After Sophie hung up, I drove to Big Mike's gym. I needed to hit something, and the heavy bag was a lot safer than Victor Brann's face. Mike was training a young fighter when I walked in, calling out combinations and adjustments. The kid was good. Fast hands, good footwork, hungry eyes. He reminded me of myself 30 years ago, back when I thought the world was full of possibilities instead of disappointments. How'd it go with the lawyer? Mike asked when the kid took a break. She's out. Conflict of interest. Good. What's next? I don't know. Victor's got that video. He can still destroy me. Mike handed me a pair of gloves. Maybe it's time to stop playing defense. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time to take the fight to him. You've been reacting to everything he's done. Time to make him react to you. I spent an hour working the heavy bag, thinking about Mike's words. He was right. I'd been playing Victor's game by Victor's rules. Time to change the rules. That afternoon, I drove to Victor's office building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of downtown. I took the elevator to the 15th floor and walked into the reception area of Brann Development Corporation. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with the kind of smile that came with media training, looked up as I approached. Can I help you? Grant Mercer to see Victor Brann. He's expecting me. She made a phone call, spoke quietly for a moment, then hung up. Mr. Brann will see you now. Conference room B, down the hall, and to your left. Victor was waiting for me in a conference room that probably cost more to furnish than I made in a year. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the mahogany table could have seated 20 people comfortably. Grant, I was wondering when you'd show up. We need to talk. Indeed we do. Have you brought my money? I sat down across from him and pulled out my phone. I scrolled to the photos Jim had taken at the lakefront property and slid the phone across the table. Victor's confident smile faltered as he looked at the images. Where did you get these? Does it matter? The question is, what do you think your wife would say if she saw them? Victor's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Margaret Brann, married to you for 25 years, mother of your 2 children, member of the country club board of directors. I bet she'd be very interested to know about your lakefront love nest. She already knows we're separated. Separated, maybe. But does she know about Dana? Does she know you've been using company assets to finance your affair? Does she know about the property deal with Patricia Wells? Victor stood up and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. That's not going to happen. Then I want you to fight fair. No more threats about the video. No more using your connections to destroy my business. We settle this like men, not like schoolyard bullies. Victor turned around, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. You're in no position to make demands. Neither are you. We both have ammunition now. The question is whether we use it or find another way to resolve this. There's nothing to resolve. Dana's made her choice. She wants to be with me. Then let her make that choice without coercion, without threats, without trying to destroy me financially. Victor was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the city below. I'll think about it, he said finally. Don't think too long. I'm not a patient man anymore. I left Victor's office feeling like I'd accomplished something, though I wasn't sure what. The war was far from over, but at least now we were fighting with equal weapons. My phone buzzed with a text from Dana. We need to talk. Tonight, 7 p.m. Starbucks on Main Street. I typed back, I'll be there. The coffee shop was crowded with the usual evening crowd. Students with laptops, business people grabbing caffeine for the drive home, couples having quiet conversations over overpriced lattes. Dana was sitting at a corner table, wearing the navy blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She looked tired. Older. The confident woman who'd introduced me as her almost ex-husband was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. You said we needed to talk? Patricia withdrew as my lawyer today. She said there was a conflict of interest. I'm sure she did. You know why, don't you? I nodded. She's been doing business with Victor. Selling him property through shell companies. Can't represent you in a divorce while she's in business with your boyfriend. Dana's face crumpled. How did you find out? Does it matter? I never meant for this to happen, Grant. Which part? The affair, the divorce, or getting caught? Any of it. All of it. Tears started running down her cheeks. I was lonely. You were always working, always focused on the business. Victor paid attention to me. He made me feel important. So you decided to blow up our marriage? I decided to be happy. For once in my life, I decided to choose happiness over obligation. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 22 years, the mother of my daughter, the person I'd shared my dreams and fears with. She was a stranger now. What do you want from me, Dana? I want you to let me go, sign the divorce papers. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You want everything I've worked for, and you want me to just hand it over with a smile? I want what's fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think it's fair to cheat on me, lie to me, humiliate me, and then take half of everything I've built? The business was built with both our sacrifices. Your sacrifice was going to dinner parties and country club events while I worked. 60-hour weeks. My sacrifice was missing Sophie's soccer games and school plays to build something that would provide for our family. There's a difference. Dana wiped her eyes with a napkin. I'm not the villain here, Grant. Neither am I. But somehow, I'm the one who's getting destroyed. We sat in silence for a while, watching the evening crowd come and go. Finally, Dana spoke. What would it take for you to agree to the divorce without a fight? I want the house. I want my business. I want my retirement accounts. You can have everything else. That's not fair. Fair is a concept that faded when you started sleeping with Victor. Now, we're just negotiating terms of surrender. Dana stood up, her face hard again. I'll find another lawyer, and I'll get what I'm entitled to. Good luck with that. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking about the conversation. Dana was right about one thing. I had been working too much, focusing too much on building the business and not enough on building the marriage, but that didn't justify what she'd done. It didn't excuse the lies, the betrayal, the calculated cruelty of it all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You made your point. Now back off before someone gets hurt. I knew it was from Victor. I typed back, the only person who's going to get hurt is the one who started this war. The gloves were officially off. The final battle began on a Monday morning when I walked into my office to find Jim waiting with a grim expression and a manila folder. We've got problems, he said. What now? 3 of our biggest clients called this morning. They're terminating their contracts, effective immediately. I sat down hard in my chair. All 3? All 3. And they all gave the same reason. They've decided to go with a different firm. A bigger firm with more resources. Brand development. That's my guess. I opened the folder Jim handed me. Inside were the termination letters, each one professionally written and legally airtight. Together, they represented about 60% of our annual revenue. He's trying to destroy us, I said. He's succeeding. Without those contracts, we can't make payroll next month. I stared at the letters, feeling the walls closing in around me. Victor was using his connections and influence to systematically dismantle my business, and there wasn't much I could do to stop him. There's more, Jim said quietly. More what? I got a call from the state licensing board. Someone filed a complaint about our business practices. They're launching an investigation. What kind of complaint? Fraud, misrepresentation, failure to disclose conflicts of interest. The usual kitchen sink approach. I laughed, but it came out sounding more like a growl. Victor's not just trying to destroy my business. He's trying to destroy my ability to ever work in real estate again. What do you want to do? I thought about it for a long moment. Victor had escalated the war, and now it was time for me to respond in kind. Remember those photos we took at the lakefront property? Yeah. I think it's time Victor's wife saw them. Jim looked uncomfortable. Grant, are you sure about this? Once you cross that line... He crossed the line when he decided to destroy my livelihood. Margaret Brann deserves to know what kind of man she's married to. That afternoon, I drove to the Brann mansion on the west side of town. It was the kind of house that appeared in architectural magazines, sprawling, elegant, and expensive. The kind of house Dana probably dreamed about living in. Margaret Brann answered the door herself. She was an attractive woman in her late 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of poise that came from decades of country club membership. She looked surprised to see me. Mr. Mercer, what are you doing here? Mrs. Brann, I need to speak with you about your husband. It's important. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let me in. The interior of the house was as impressive as the exterior. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that probably cost more than most people's cars. She led me to a sitting room that overlooked the perfectly manicured backyard. Would you like some coffee? No, thank you. This won't take long. Margaret sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap. What did you want to discuss? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Jim had taken. Her face went white as she scrolled through them. Where did you get these? I hired a private investigator. It wasn't technically true, but it wasn't technically false either. Margaret stared at the photos for a long time. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. How long has this been going on? At least 6 months, probably longer. And the woman is your wife? Soon to be ex-wife, yes. Margaret handed me back my phone and walked to the window. She stood there for several minutes, looking out at her perfect backyard. Victor told me he wanted a separation, she said finally. He said he needed time to figure things out. I thought it was a midlife crisis. I thought he'd come to his senses. I'm sorry, Mrs. Brann. I know this is painful. She turned around and the tears were gone, replaced by something harder. Why are you showing me this? Because your husband is trying to destroy my life. He's using his business connections to ruin me financially. He's filed false complaints with state agencies to damage my professional reputation. I want it to stop. And you think showing me these photos will make him stop? I think it will give you leverage in your own divorce proceedings. Victor's been hiding assets, using company resources for personal expenses, conducting an affair with a subordinate. That's going to be expensive for him when your lawyers get involved. Margaret smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. You're asking me to help you destroy my husband. I'm asking you to protect yourself from a man who's already betraying you. She was quiet for a long time, thinking. Finally, she spoke. I'll need copies of those photos. I'll email them to you. And I'll need any other evidence you have. Financial records, property transactions, anything that shows he's been using marital assets for this affair. I can get you that information. Margaret walked me to the door. As I was leaving, she put her hand on my arm. Mr. Mercer, I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this to help you. I'm doing this because Victor humiliated me. He made me look like a fool in front of our friends, our family, our community. That's unforgivable. I understand. Good, because when I'm done with him, there won't be much left for you to destroy. I drove home feeling like I'd just lit a very long fuse on a very large bomb. Margaret Brann had the resources and the motivation to make Victor's life extremely difficult, and she struck me as a woman who knew how to use both effectively. My phone rang as I was pulling into my driveway, Sophie's number. Dad, what the hell did you do now? Hello to you too, sweetheart. Mom called me hysterical. She says Victor's wife showed up at his office with divorce papers and a team of lawyers. She says you're responsible. Your mother gives me too much credit. Dad, this has gone too far. People are getting hurt. People were already getting hurt, Sophie. I'm just evening the odds. This isn't a game. You're right. It's war. And I didn't start it, but I'm damn sure going to finish it. Sophie was quiet for a moment. I don't recognize you anymore, Dad. Good. The old me was a pushover. The old me let people walk all over him. The new me fights back. The new you is destroying everything. Everything was already destroyed. I'm just clearing away the wreckage. After Sophie hung up, I sat in my car in the driveway, looking at the house I'd called home for 15 years. Dana's car wasn't there. She was probably consoling Victor or looking for a new place to live. My phone buzzed with a text from Victor. You've made a serious mistake. This isn't over. I typed back, You're right, it's not over. It's just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard decorated with toilet paper and my mailbox knocked over. Someone had spray-painted asshole across my garage door in red letters. I was cleaning up the mess when my neighbor Bob walked over. Rough night? He asked. Something like that. Kids these days have no respect. I didn't bother correcting him. Bob had been my neighbor for 10 years, and I didn't want to explain that my wife's boyfriend had probably hired someone to vandalize my house. Hey, Grant, Bob said as I was scrubbing paint off the garage door. I don't know what's going on with you and Dana, but I want you to know that some of us are on your side. I looked up at him. What do you mean? I mean, we've seen the guy she's been bringing around. Fancy car, expensive suits, old enough to be her father. We're not stupid. We know what's going on. I appreciate that, Bob. Marriage is supposed to mean something. When you make a promise, you keep it. That's how I was raised. Bob went back to his house, and I continued scrubbing paint. It was going to take several coats of primer and paint to cover the damage, but I had time. I had nothing but time now. My phone rang. Jim's number. Turn on Channel 7, he said without preamble. I went inside and turned on the television. The local news was running a story about a prominent businessman whose wife had filed for divorce, alleging adultery and misuse of company funds. They didn't mention Victor by name, but they showed footage of his office building and described him as a major player in the local development scene. The reporter interviewed a divorce attorney who wasn't involved in the case but was willing to speculate about the potential financial implications. When you're dealing with high net worth individuals and allegations of marital misconduct, the financial settlements can be substantial, the lawyer said. We're potentially talking about millions of dollars in assets, plus punitive damages if the misconduct involved company resources. I turned off the television and called Margaret Brann. I saw the news, I said when she answered. That's just the beginning. My lawyers are very thorough. How is Victor taking it? Not well. He's hired his own team of lawyers, but they're playing defense. It's hard to defend against photographic evidence and financial records. What about Dana? What about her? She's collateral damage in a war between Victor and me. I don't care what happens to her. Margaret's coldness was almost frightening, but I understood it. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and Margaret Brann had been scorned very publicly. Is there anything else you need from me? Not at the moment. I'll let you know if that changes. After Margaret hung up, I sat in my living room and tried to process everything that had happened. In the span of a week, I'd gone from victim to participant in a war that was destroying multiple lives. Victor's business was under investigation, his marriage was over, and his reputation was in tatters. Dana was caught in the crossfire, facing her own divorce proceedings without the financial support she'd been counting on. And me? I was still standing, but barely. My business was struggling, my marriage was over, and my relationship with my daughter was strained. But I was still fighting, and that had to count for something. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the lakefront property. 1 hour. Come alone. I knew it was from Victor. This was it. The final confrontation. Everything had been building to this moment. I drove to the lakefront property as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Victor's BMW was parked in the driveway, and I could see him standing on the dock, looking out over the water. I walked down to the dock, my footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. You came, Victor said without turning around. You asked me to. I asked you to come alone. How do I know you didn't bring backup? Because I'm not afraid of you anymore. Victor turned around, and I was shocked by his appearance. The confident, well-groomed businessman was gone. His hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. You destroyed everything, he said. You destroyed everything. I just made sure you didn't destroy me in the process. My wife is taking everything. The house, the business, the investments, 25 years of marriage, gone. Welcome to the club, Victor laughed bitterly. You think this is funny? I think it's justice. We stood there on the dock, two men who'd lost everything important to them, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. What happens now? Victor asked. Now we both start over. Try to rebuild our lives from whatever's left. And Dana? Dana made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Victor nodded slowly. I loved her, you know. It wasn't just an affair. I really loved her. So did I? Once. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The war was over, and while there were no real winners, at least the fighting had stopped. My phone rang as I was driving home. Sophie's number. Dad, are you okay? I saw the news about Victor. I'm fine, sweetheart. Is it over? Yeah, I think it is. What are you going to do now? I thought about it for a moment. I'm going to rebuild. The business, my life, my relationship with you. I'm going to start over and try to do better this time. I'd like that, Dad. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. When I got home, Dana's car was in the driveway. I found her in the living room, surrounded by boxes and suitcases. I'm moving out, she said without looking up. Where will you go? I found an apartment downtown. It's small, but it's what I can afford now. I looked at this woman who'd been my wife for 22 years, packing up the remnants of our life together. For what it's worth, Dana, I'm sorry it ended this way. She looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. So am I, Grant. So am I. She finished packing and left without another word. I watched her drive away, taking with her the last pieces of the life we'd built together. I poured myself a drink and sat in my empty house, thinking about the future. It wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding a business, starting over at 50, learning to be alone again. But for the first time in months, I felt like I had a chance. The war was over, and I was still standing. That had to count for something. 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 Count for